The kids that are coming from homes without a father, and sometimes not a mother present, it's our responsibility to mentor them, to reach out, to look outside of our comfort level of our world or our box and pick up a kid to go grocery shopping with us or take out to lunch, and you begin a mentor relationship with them. Mm-hmm. And through that relationship, you open up their eyes to see a different way of living.
Recent studies have found that nearly 19 million children in the U.S. are growing up with only one parent, and that over a fourth of those single parents are wrestling with poverty. Today, we're joined by guests from Father's Love, a ministry that works primarily with children from low-income, single-parent homes. They're following a great calling to help families connect with each other and God. Before we join them, though, please take a moment to check out David Wilkerson's audiobook, Have You Felt Like Giving Up Lately? It's available now as a free download at worldchallenge.org. We're able to make resources like this audiobook and podcast available thanks to generous support from our listeners. Please consider donating to power the mission and make these works possible. And now, here's our host, Gary Wilkerson.
Hey guys, welcome to the Gary Wilkerson podcast. But I'm here today with some family and good friends of ours from Father's Love Ministry down in Jacksonville, Texas, not Jacksonville, Florida. I just returned from Jacksonville, Florida last night, and not to be confused with Jacksonville, Texas, but Brent and Melissa Wagner, right? The Wagners from there, and long-standing World Challenge leader and aficionado in making all things run well, and also happened to be my brother-in-law, Roger Yonker. We're glad to have you guys here with us today. Thanks for joining us.
Appreciate you guys coming.
Thanks for having us. So you guys run Father's Love. So Roger, why don't you tell me what is Father's Love? Is it what kind of ministry is it, and who does it serve?
Yeah, it's a ministry really to what we call at-risk kids.
Okay.
We focus in on kids that are 10 years of age all the way up to about 18 years of age. And it's a place where we try to teach them about the love of Christ. A lot of them do not have fathers, or if they do have fathers, they're not involved in their lives. And we try to tell them that there is a loving Father that cares for them, that loves them. And we try to disciple them. We try to teach them about the things of God and train them in the ways of God.
Yeah, it's a great need that you guys are working in the ministry as well. That youth culture is, it's like seems to be getting further and further from God, further and further from the church, further and further from the family. So you're seeing a lot of that, like kind of a fatherlessness in the area, because you guys are more in it's kind of an inner city ministry, as you were saying, but in a rural context a little bit. Yeah. So, and how long you guys been with the ministry?
So we've been there since it started in Jacksonville.
Which was when?
So it's 12 or 13 years ago.
Well, okay. So you guys have been faithful, consistent. You've seen, and so I'm just curious, in a rural context, out in kind of East Texas countryside, do you see the same kind of addiction to the iPhone and the gaming and things like that?
Yeah, can't imagine that it would be any worse in the city, in a big city, than it is where we're at. As far as, we have 10-year-olds that have phones, like their phone, and they're on it all the time. We have a policy where when they come, we take it because we don't want to get lost or stolen or broken.
Okay, yeah.
Plus, we don't want to be distracted while they're there. But we have kids all the time that are trying to keep it on them and not give it. But yeah, they're. I've heard that this is like the first generation now that's grown up with, a supercomputer in their pocket.
Yeah.
And addicted to video games and social media. Yeah. That's their world.
Yeah.
So
that's the
exposed very young to pornography.
All the dangers that come with that.
Yeah. It's just ruining hearts and minds and making it almost impossible to have a healthy relationship between a young man and a young woman.
We actually have a security wand we used to use. When the kids would come in, we'll take their cell phones away. And they would and a lot of times they would try to hide them, and they didn't want us to let us know that they had them. So we'd take the little wand and it would go off and confiscate it. But we want to be able to focus in on what we're talking about and be able to relate to them and engage with them.
One of the things, and I remember when we got that, was in response not to cell phones, but we had a young man. He's maybe 15 at the time, and his mom found a gun in his jacket one day, and she told us about it. And this kid was getting into trouble at school, and he was getting into fights, and so she was worried that he was going to use it. Yeah. And so when he came, it was a cold day, and our gym is kind of it's just a covered gym. There's not like heat in it, but the kids still love playing basketball even in the cold. And so he came in with that big puffy jacket, and we had a lot of kids there, and we were so we ended up using that wand. Thankfully, he didn't bring it. Oh, good. But that was kind of what spurred it. But the cell phone part of it definitely is kids all the time trying to keep it up.
We started in Father's Love when we started. We did that, and that was a decade ago. So taking a kid's cell phone up at the start of a lesson a decade ago was not as big a deal as doing it now. But that we started that so early on, I think, was really helpful. They're used to that culture. They just they pass them in at the start, and that's just the way it is. Yeah. I don't think we realized how important that would be down the road.
That's right. Yeah.
What are some of the main difficulties these young people are facing in your context in the East Texas there, or and it's probably that's real middle America to some degree. So what kids are facing there, they're facing in Kansas City and in St. Louis and in Phoenix, Arizona, Jacksonville, Florida, where I was. Just probably the same kind of things. Maybe some of the contexts like L.A., New York, Chicago might be slightly different for a 10 to 18-year-old. But what are some of the things that are facing a 10 to 18-year-old in the ministry you're working with at Father's Love?
There's a statistic I read recently. It's talking about the United States as a whole, but it says 900,000 to 1 million kids have experienced either abuse or neglect. That's a large number. That's in the United States. We have a prayer box where we ask the kids to put prayer requests in, and probably the two most frequent things that we see are the same things: neglect or abuse. Yeah. We have kids that they come and once we develop a relationship with them, they share. And one of the things that one girl shared just recently that she was raped by her mother's ex-boyfriend on several occasions, and there's never any healing that took place. So when something that happened, it was kind of pushed under the cover. Yeah. But she's dealing with this, and then hopefully, because of the relationship that we develop with them, they open up and they share, and then we're able to share Christ with them, and we see a healing take place. But neglect and abuse is a big item. Yeah,
we talked about it on this podcast before. Christian counselors talk about two different types of trauma, and one being something that should never happen to a child that did happen, and that's where being hit, being sexually abused, being called a name, and that creates trauma in a child's life. And the second type of trauma is less pronounced, but sometimes more difficult to deal with, and that's things that should have happened to you that didn't happen to you. Right. And that's where you have a father speak into your life. You have a full family unit, so you have a mother and father there to care for you in the unique ways that masculine and feminine can do. They're speaking into your life, helping you have courage, helping you have direction and stuff like that. So I think that's what you're speaking of. Abuse is the physical, sexual harm, and then neglect is, and there's even that emotional unavailability. So it's like even if the mother's there, maybe a single mom, which I'd like to talk about that in a moment. They might be under such anxiety and stress and pain and suffering themselves, or having gone through trauma themselves, that they're not emotionally available to their children. So even if there's a mom or a dad in the house, it's sometimes hard for them to do that. So what percentage of the kids you're working with are from a single family home?
I don't know if we have any numbers, but I would say at least 50%, maybe 75%. Does that seem like a fair?
Maybe more.
Yeah. Most of the kids that we work with come from.
My guess is at least 75%, maybe up to 90.
Yeah, it's
maybe.
What's rare, what's more surprising is to see a kid from a home with a mother and father in the home. Right.
Yeah.
That's very uncommon, and you can see a difference between those kids.
Yeah.
They do much better.
And do you have a why behind that? Why do those numbers skew so high?
Well, I mean, one thing is that's kind of who we're targeting. I mean, that's who we want to minister to. So, unfortunately, in culture, that's the socioeconomic ramifications. Like, there are certain neighborhoods that you're going to have a higher percentage of kids that are coming from single-parent homes, and those are the neighborhoods that we're mostly in. I mean, we're open to all youth in Jacksonville, but that's kind of who our heart is to go for. So that's probably the main reason why our numbers are that high. Right. And I don't know the statistics on, just the whole population, but more and more kids are coming from either divorced, separated homes, or never got married in the first place.
I would say that a lot of the families start from a single parent home. There's never a father that's really in the home. They don't even split up half the time. There's so much teen pregnancy.
Yeah, and that's the main thing. I mean, the main group of kids that we work with predominantly come from mom who never got married. So there was never that unit. And oftentimes, I mean, and we're seeing it more and more, over the years, you see how vivid it is that you have a mom or a young lady that becomes a mom at a young age. And so she's raising a kid with no experience. She didn't have a dad at home. She maybe not had a mom at home or whatever. And so she's,
very much a kid herself.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that just perpetuates all the issues that come with that.
And in Jacksonville itself, where the city that we work out of, the statistic is in Jacksonville, you talked about teenage pregnancies. It's got the highest rate per capita is in Jacksonville. And not just one child, but you have a teenage girl that gets pregnant, has a child, and then she has another child and another child. So it's multiple children that a single mom is trying to raise.
Yeah, and sometimes you see grandmothers that are like 32 years old, 33 years old. It's pretty. It's kind of makes for a pretty rough life. So if you got trauma, you've got abuse, you've got teenage moms who maybe aren't prepared for raising kids. So these kids grow up in an environment. What are you seeing when the kids come to you? What are they like?
A lot of kids, they don't know how to deal with authority figures. And it's kind of a natural result of that. And
so you're the authority figure. How do they treat you?
It depends. Okay. We try to always, we part of our program is we have a gym, so we play a lot of games, and so I'm out there playing with them. If to get them in order, we get them on a line, and if I give them 10 seconds to get on the line, if they can't do it, the whole group does push-ups. I'll do push-ups with them. Okay. We'll play basketball. Doing whatever we can just to kind of relate with them, and so that always helps. I know when we first began, back in a former life before kids and everything. I would stay up late and play basketball till all hours of the night. Right. And so that group of guys and then their friends, they just knew me as kind of like coach, I would get out there and play. Yeah. And that gave me a lot of, I think the kids call it street cred. Street cred. Yeah. So, and so that, a guy who I never met would come in and know me because I play basketball with them. And so
they kind of respect you then?
Yeah, so there's a little bit, you're starting off with that. But if a kid doesn't know me from anybody and they come in, it depends on the personality of the kid. For example, the phone thing, if we say, hey, we got a policy, and a lot of kids will kick back against that. They might reluctantly give it, or they might say, no, I got to call my mom, or, or I'm not giving you my phone.
So authority, what other things do you see happening? Are any of the kids at that age starting to experiment with drugs? Or?
Oh, yeah, for sure. We have tons of especially late middle school maybe and in high school is where they're really starting to experiment. I had a young man just tell me his family, which is pretty rough kind of a family, kind of almost had an intervention for him because they saw some things in his life that he was going in the wrong direction pretty fast. Yeah. And so mostly it's marijuana that they start off with, but we know of several kids that got into cocaine and meth. And,
wow.
And it's kind of, you start to learn it's like a self medicating thing. There's depression or neglect or loneliness, and then they're coming into adolescence and don't really know what to do with that. So that could be a coping mechanism that they turn to drugs. I know a lot of the kids they're promiscuous, and if there is abuse, like sexual abuse in the past, it makes it even worse. The young girls will grow up with not a sense of their body being private, and they just become promiscuous at a very young age, and that causes all kinds of trouble and heartache,
Oh, yeah.
Another thing, Gary, would be the poverty that they live in. The school district that's north of us, Tyler, Texas. It's a bigger city than Jacksonville. But we had the president of the independent school district of the trustees mentioned that 75% of the kids in the school system are in poverty.
In Tyler or in
Jacksonville? In Tyler. Jacksonville is probably very similar, is what I'm assuming. That happens to be the big city that's close to us.
Right.
And you said that statistic, which kind of surprised me. That's 3 out of 4 kids are living in poverty.
And I think the area you mentioned is actually fairly more affluent than even Jacksonville, or at least the neighborhood you're working in. So yeah, that's probably a pretty out there statistic compared to the rest of the nation, but not unlike a lot of cities as well. So.
And when you're living in poverty, you're talking about a single mom usually trying to raise kids by herself, trying to pay the gas bill on minimum wage, trying to pay the food bill, trying to take care of herself, her job. Yeah. There's a lot of stress. There's a lot of doing it by yourself, and it's a struggle. We had a young girl a teenage girl that came and shared her prayer request with one of our staff members, and she said, "Can you pray that I get a job?" And our staff person thought, "Hey, that's neat that you're trying to get a job, but you're only 14 years of age. Why?" I want to help my mom. I see her struggling. I see the emotional turmoil that it takes, and I want to be able to help her. I got thinking, a 14-year-old girl should be enjoying her teenage years, and here she's concerned. Thank God that she is concerned, but she's trying to help her mother with the bills and everyday living.
Wow, that's tough stuff. It's hard to see. It must be taxing on you guys to day in and day out. You're working with these poverty and addictions and brokenness. Speak for a moment about the parent, whether it be a dad. I don't know if there's any dads raising kids there at all, or a couple dads. But so a single dad or a single mom, or a couple that's living in poverty or low income. Kids are same age, 10 to 18, and they're starting to get out there on the streets and maybe get a little violent or have a gun or start to do drugs. Do you minister to the parent as well, or is it all just the kids? Do you ever have conversations with mom?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of an extension of our ministry is to work with the parents. Just recently, actually, Saturday before we came up here, I had a mom call me because we had to kind of kick her son out just for that one day.
How old is he?
He's 15 or 16.
So she was. It's got to be heartbreaking for her.
And she loves our program, and she wasn't mad, but she wanted to know why, obviously. And so I just talked to her and I just told her, like, hey, he was kind of picking on a 7th grader, and I told him stop, he wouldn't stop, whatever the issue was. And but she's she has there's a dad around, or a stepdad around, but I know that family's been through a lot. But I mean, we always are trying to keep our ear open for any time that a kid comes and shares something that's family related. I don't know if it was the same girl that you were mentioning, but she had said that they had been without hot water for about 2 years. And so,
oh my goodness.
So we didn't know, and she has 5 kids, 4 of them either come or have come to our program, and so we were happy to help, and so we ended up putting a hot water heater in.
Wow. I'm going to ask all. I'm glad you guys did that. That's power. I almost didn't catch that. You put the hot water heater in for them. That's
a lot of times you're talking to the kids, you'll see these physical needs that need to take place, and we pray about it. We see if we can actually do it. If it's a major renovation, we're not able to do it, but if it's something simple, like you were saying, put a hot water heater in, we try to do that for them. That gives us a rapport with the family.
Wow, love that. Just keeping on the subject of family, so I want to ask all 3 of you this question. Just pretend we put another chair here, and one of your moms from your program, or maybe somebody who's listening, came into our studio today, and she's like, 32 years old. She has a 15-year-old son. He's starting to experiment with drugs. He's running around with the wrong crowd. She's worried. She's anxious. What do you say to her? I'll start with you, Roger, if you don't mind.
Probably try to encourage her to have her child come to Father's Love.
Okay. Yeah.
Usually we ask the mom to come as well, so she has a better idea of what we're about. And we can try to describe it to her, but actually being there, seeing what we do, kind of gives her a comfort feeling.
Yeah.
And then once the child gets there, hopefully, a lot of times when the child comes, they'll see friends of theirs from school, and it kind of encourages them to come.
Yeah.
And if they come, to me, that's the seed that we've got.
Yeah.
They're there. We can expose them to Christ at that time. So really just getting them to come into our facility is what we try to get the parents to do.
That's good. It shows you trust the work that God's called you to do, that you can help people. And for those who don't live in Jacksonville, maybe they're listening to our podcast today and they have this again, son or daughter who's troubled. So what I hear you saying then is like, if it's not Father's Love in Jacksonville, it could be the youth group at your local church, or Awanas is another type of thing. I remember going to Royal Rangers. Did you ever do that?
Yeah, the Assemblies.
Have you heard of that?
I heard of it, yeah.
You've heard of it? Okay, yeah. That was kind of cool. We made these wood cars that were racing cars that went down the... Anyway, don't want to get off subject here. But those are good influences. There's so many bad influences out there. I think your advice is well taken, that it's important to get them in an environment, because you go whatever community and you're going to become like. I've heard people say, like, introduce me to your 5 closest friends and I'll tell you what you're going to be like. You're going to be like that. So how about yourself, Melissa? What would you say to this?
Especially with teenagers, I would say it's just all about relationship. So if there's a breakdown in relationship with the mom, doesn't feel like they can communicate well with the kids, I would, we could try to come in and help bridge the gap, or encourage them to go to counseling, try to figure out why is the teenager taking the drug? What are they trying to, heal on their own or medicate, And I would say try to build that relationship and understand what's going on in the young person's life that they're turning to that substance. I would, for sure, we would pray with them or encourage them to pray, for their son or daughter.
Yeah, good. Anything to add to that?
Yeah, definitely think that, the teenage years is a time where they're breaking away from mom and dad, relationally and authority-wise. They're making their own decisions. And so keeping that relationship open and not just being the authority figure all the time is difficult to do for a parent. But it's a natural break that needs to happen. I wouldn't call it a break because it's not instantaneous, it's a process, but keeping the airways open as far as what's going on in their life. Might be some things that the mom or dad need to apologize and ask for forgiveness for, because there might be some ways that they've surely they're not encouraging that type of behavior, but at least there's that relationship in there is so crucial that being able to ask for forgiveness might bring down some walls. And then, like Melissa said, kids need relationship, not just with peers, but with other people outside of their parents as well, that can speak into their lives. And so we always are wanting more mentors to be a part of our program. And so, having somebody who's older, grounded, hopefully knows Jesus. But even if they don't know Jesus, somebody who is, mature enough to help, the young man or woman, see their choices, and just to be a big friend, big brother that they can guide them through, But it's such a tough situation for a single mom or single dad to see their kid make bad decisions. It's heart-wrenching, So
instead of more adults there is involved in a child's life, the better chance they have of success. So if you got a single mom, there's only one adult, but if there's a dad, even if it's a deadbeat dad or just somebody that's not, that's there but not really involved in the kid's life, that helps. And then you have a coach, or you have a Sunday school teacher, or a neighbor, a Christian that would take an interest in that child. The chances of that child doing well and succeeding is increased tremendously.
Wow, yeah. I couldn't be more in alignment with what you're saying. The idea of, I think parents, and maybe even a single parent in the ministry that I've been involved with and helping people like that in that situation, they want to see their kids have relationships, like, because sometimes there's a difficulty adjusting. So maybe if the mother's, like you talked about earlier, the mother's not prepared to be a mother, so that kid's growing up and maybe hasn't learned social skills, and so they're having a hard time fitting in. That's why they go to gangs and drugs sometimes. And so the mother or the father is like, oh, I'm so glad you found friends. They may be the worst friends in the world. And so you're kind of abdicating your responsibility to train up a child and giving it over to kids, thinking like, that's good, they finally found some friends, and like, and hey mom, I'm going over to so and so's house, and you don't check and you don't think, you don't say no ever, and so I'm with you that the parent really there's this word in counseling called attachment, that kids are going to be attached to somebody, and they're meant to be primarily attached to mother or father, and that's where they get their wise counsel and wisdom. If the mother and the father are not giving that to them, then they're going to attach outside of that, usually to peer group, and you do, as you know, to your primary mentor, a form of attachment being another 14-year-old who's also gangbanging and doing drugs. They're not going to get a whole lot of wise counsel. They're not going to this girl said this to me, what should I do? Write this on Facebook. They're getting the worst kind of counsel, and then their life is spinning more out of control. And so, I always encourage parents to really care about, like, that is, you are more important than they think you are. Your time with those kids, even if the kids are sort of like, because the kids go through that age where they're starting to say, like, I don't want to be with you, Mom. It's like, oh, no, why can't you just let me go be with my friends? And just to protect that and say, nope, put some discipline down. Say, no, you and I we're going to go for a walk now. And that keeps that, you may not know it, and the kid may fight against it, but it keeps that sense of attachment towards the parent. Of course, that speaks a whole nother, I don't mean to ramble on here. You're my guest, I should be asking you to say. But that speaks to the parent that's being attached to have something good to say. And that's where the discipleship of the parent is important too, to do that.
That's a key thing, because all through the Bible it talks about train a child in the ways of God. Diligently teach the Word of God. But if there's not a Christian parent or there's not a Christian father, someone's going to step up to the plate. And it's going to be that 14-year-old peer, that's going to give them advice and tell them to do different things.
And that's, I wasn't part of youth group growing up, but now being a parent, realizing that church is not a place where I drop my kids off to go get discipled, or to share the gospel with. Like my first ministry is in the home. Like I want to, like you said, I'm training my children about who God is and who is Jesus and what is sin and all of those things. And so that's where it begins. The church is a facilitator of that, or is an encourager of that, instead of just thinking, well, taking them to a place can only do so much. But like you said, the parental influence is so much greater than I think we realize.
But then, so that's speaking for kids who are growing up in a home with a Christian mother and father, or parents who care. And when you're talking about kids that we interact with that father's love, sadly, many of them are coming from homes where there's so much neglect and there isn't that love and relationship. So that's where we come in. That's where as the body of Christ and what the Bible says, that is our responsibility, those children. The kids that are coming from homes without a father, and sometimes not a mother present, it's our responsibility to mentor them, to reach out, to look outside of our comfort level of our world or our box and pick up a kid to go grocery shopping with us or take out to lunch, and you begin a mentor relationship with them. And through that relationship, you open up their eyes to see a different way of living. So that's Father's love. That is just, those are the kids that we really, look out for and care for, and that really get stuck in your heart. And that's who God calls us to look out for. So, and as Christians, that's what we're responsible for. Those kids that are coming from so much less than what we're blessed with or what our own kids are blessed with in our home. What about the kids who have abuse in the background or who have been taken by CPS and are hopping from home to home? Who's taking care of them? Who's looking after them? it's our responsibility to reach out.
That's a good thought. It's so true. Well, thank you guys for the ministry you're doing, and thanks for taking the time to speak to us today. This is, I really believe this could be helpful for whether it's a parent or somebody in ministry or even a teenager listening, that they know that, and I think one of the big takeaways is there's hope. So thanks
for having us.
Yeah.
It's a privilege.
Appreciate you guys. God bless.
The Bible talks often about God caring for those who have been marginalized by society. As believers, we can be the hands and feet of His love to many single parents, teen parents, and children of broken homes. Please join us in praying for the workers at Father's Love and for the children who are longing for compassion and care. The Gary Wilkerson podcast is brought to you by World Challenge. Sound design for this episode by Mike Hallsmith. This episode was written by Rachel Schemitz. Our producer is Chris Wigington, with video production by Aaron Gale. Each week, this podcast reaches thousands of listeners. This critical work is made possible by the generous contributions of individuals like you who believe in World Challenge's mission. Thank you for listening and supporting. Well, we hope you tune in next week to the Gary Wilkerson podcast for more encouragement in your Christian walk. Until then, do all you can to live a better life and make a better world through Jesus Christ.